The docks at Hardhome stank of panic and salt. Jon Snow stood near the shore watching the free folk shove each other toward boats that couldn't hold them all. Women screamed at men who wouldn't let their children through. Old warriors with axes swore oaths they'd never needed before. The Night's Watch tried to keep order, but order had left hours ago when the first runner came back bleeding, talking about the dead walking. Jon had seen fear. He'd watched brothers die on the wall, but this was different. This was a crowd eating itself alive before the enemy arrived. Tormund stood beside him, face hard as winter stone. "Your boats won't save half of them." "They'll save more than staying here," Jon said. A man shoved past them, dragging 2 children by their wrists. One of the boys tripped. The father didn't slow. Jon reached out, caught the child before he went into the crush, handed him back. The father didn't thank him. He just ran. That's when the screaming changed pitch. The edge of the camp collapsed inward like a wave breaking. People weren't shoving anymore. They were stampeding. Jon heard the clash of steel, then something worse, a silence spreading from the north like frost over water. "They're here," Tormund said. Jon drew Longclaw. The Valyrian steel caught the dim light, a line of brightness in the gray. Around him the watch formed up, but their eyes were wrong. Too wide. Too much white showing. The whites came through the tree line in a mass. Not running, flowing. Men, women, children, all with the same pale skin and blue burning eyes. They moved like a single thing, with 1,000 limbs. Jon had fought them before. He knew what they were. But knowing and watching were different things. A white that had been a grandmother lunged at a warrior twice her size. Her fingers tore into his throat. He went down. She kept moving. "Fall back to the boats," Jon shouted. No one listened. They couldn't. The camp was a tangle of bodies, living and dead, all converging on the shore. Jon swung Longclaw through a white's neck. The head came off clean. The body collapsed. One less. Thousands more. Then something changed in the air. Jon felt it before he saw it, a break in the rhythm of slaughter. A space opening where there shouldn't be one. He turned. A man stood at the choke point between 2 collapsed huts, where the path narrowed to the docks. He wasn't dressed for the north, no furs, just leather and bronze that looked older than the wall. His skin was white, but not like a white, like ash. A red mark ran from his left eye down across his shoulder, stark as blood on snow. The man didn't shout orders. He just moved. A white charged him. The man caught it by the skull and crushed inward until bone gave way. One-handed. Another came from the side. He grabbed a length of broken timber, swung it through 3 whites at once. They flew apart. He wasn't fighting them. He was clearing space. "Who in the frozen hells?" Tormund started. Jon didn't answer. He watched the stranger plant himself at the narrowest point of the path and refused to move. Whites piled onto him. He tore through them. Not with skill, with violence that had weight behind it. Every movement crushed bone, every step held ground. The free folks saw the gap. They ran for it. The stranger let them through without looking. His focus stayed on the dead. "Get them to the boats," Jon yelled at Tormund. Tormund hesitated, staring at the ashen man. Then he grabbed the nearest wildling and shoved him toward the water. "Move, you stupid bastard! Move!" Jon fought his way toward the stranger. Longclaw cut through 2 whites, blocking his path. He reached the choke point just as a white walker stepped into view, ice sword gleaming. The walker raised its blade. Jon lunged. Long Claw met the ice weapon with a sound like breaking glass. The walker's eyes widened shock. Maybe that the steel didn't shatter. John drove the point through its chest. It exploded into frozen shards. He turned. The stranger was watching him now, but only for a heartbeat. Then the man went back to work, methodical as a butcher. John wanted to ask questions. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why are you here? But questions took time, and time was the one thing they didn't have. The boats began to pull away from shore, packed so full they sat low in the water. People still screamed from the docks, reaching out begging. John forced himself to look away. They couldn't save everyone. The stranger stepped back from the choke point finally. His hands were covered in black ichor. He glanced at the departing boats, then at John. That all you're taking? His voice was rough low, an accent John didn't recognize. It's all we can carry, John said. The ashen man said nothing. He turned and walked toward the last boat without waiting for permission. John followed, cutting down 2 more whites on the way. Tormund was already on the boat hauling people aboard by their collars. He saw Kratos coming and his hand went to his axe. He's with us, John said. Tormund's eyes narrowed. Says who? Says the fact that half these people are alive because of him. Kratos stepped onto the boat. It rocked under his weight. He didn't sit, just stood at the edge, glancing back at Hardhome. The camp was chaos. Whites tearing through anyone too slow to reach the water. The living dying. The dead rising. John watched a man go down, white hands tearing at his throat. The body hit the frozen ground and went still. A corpse was still a corpse until the thing behind them decided it wasn't. They'll all rise again, John said mostly to himself. They don't rise. The stranger's voice cut through the wind. They get used? John glanced at him. What's the difference? Rising means they had a choice. Being used means they never did. The boat pulled farther from shore. The last screams faded under the crash of waves. John counted the survivors in his head. 300 maybe, out of 5,000. Then the cold came. Not the cold of winter. Something else. The temperature dropped so fast, John's breath turned to mist mid-exhale. Frost spread across the water between the boat and the shore. His teeth wanted to chatter. He clenched his jaw. Kratos didn't even seem to notice the shift. A figure stepped onto the dock. Tall, pale as bone, eyes like frozen fire. Armor made of ice that caught the dying light and bent it into something sharp. The White Walkers flanked him silent as statues. The Night King. John had never seen him before, but he knew. Everyone knew. You didn't need to be told what you were looking at when death itself stood in front of you. The Night King walked to the edge of the dock. He looked at the boats. Not with anger, not with hunger, with the certainty of a man who already owned what he was looking at. Then he raised his arms. Every corpse on the beach stood up. Thousands of them, all at once. The sound of bones cracking back into place of flesh, reknitting around dead muscle, filled the air like a chorus. Men John had fought beside, women he'd tried to save, children who had died screaming. They all stood, they all turned, they all stared at the boats with the same empty blue gaze. John's stomach turned to ice. Tormund swore in a language John didn't know. The Night King lowered his arms. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The message was clear. You can run. I'll just make you mine later. The stranger at the edge of the boat hadn't moved. His ash-white knuckles gripped the railing. John saw his jaw tighten. You know what that was? John asked. The stranger didn't look at him. He kept staring at the Night King across the water. "Yeah," he said. "I know exactly what that was." His voice was different now, colder, harder. Someone who thinks he owns death. John waited for more. The stranger didn't give it. He just stood there, locked onto the figure on the dock, like a man memorizing a target. The boat turned south, pulling them away from Hardhome. The settlement shrank behind them, swallowed by mist and the fading sound of slaughter. The dead stood in perfect silence, waiting for commands that would come without words. John sheathed Longclaw. His hand shook, not from cold. "We need to warn the wall," Tormund said. "They need to know what's coming." "They won't believe it," John said. "Then make them believe." John looked at the stranger, still silent, still staring north, even though Hardhome had disappeared into the mist. "What's your name?" John asked. The stranger finally turned. His eyes were dark, but there was something behind them that John recognized. Not fear, not rage. Something older than both. "Kratos?" John nodded. "You fight like you've done this before." "I've fought worse." "Worse than that." John gestured back toward where the Night King had been. Kratos didn't blink. "Yeah." Tormund laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're either lying or you're mad." "Believe what you want," Kratos said. He turned away, ending the conversation. John wanted to press, but something in the man's posture warned him off. This wasn't a soldier looking for orders. This wasn't a sellsword looking for coin. This was something else. The boat rocked through dark water. The survivors huddled together, shivering. Some cried. Most just stared at nothing. John moved among them, checking wounds, offering water. No one spoke. What was there to say? He found a boy, maybe 8, sitting alone. The child's hands were bloody, not from injury, from trying to hold on to his mother as the whites dragged her away. John crouched beside him. "What's your name?" The boy didn't answer. "You're safe now," John said. The boy met his eyes with a gaze too old for his face. "No one's safe." John had no response to that, because the boy was right. He stood, walked back to where Kratos leaned against the mast. The warrior hadn't moved, hadn't spoken to anyone, just stood there like a stone in a river, letting everything flow past him. "You came out of nowhere," John said. "Why Kratos didn't turn? Wrong place, right time." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." John studied him. The ash-white skin, the red mark. The way he held himself, not tense, but ready. Always ready. "You said you fought worse," John said. "What does worse look like?" Kratos was quiet for a long moment. Then, gods who thought they owned people. Monsters who wore crowns. Power that couldn't be killed because no one believed it could die. And you killed it anyway. "Yes." "How?" Kratos finally looked at him. His eyes were hard as obsidian. "I stopped asking permission." The boat sailed on. Castle Black was still days away. The wall waited in the south, massive and ancient, the last line between the living and the dead. John wondered if it would be enough. He looked at Kratos, standing alone in the cold, staring at nothing. He wondered what kind of war brought men like that into the world. And he wondered what it meant that one had just walked into theirs. The boats reached the southern shore 3 days after Hardhome. John counted heads as people stumbled onto frozen ground. 294. He'd estimated 300 on the water. 6 had died during the crossing. Wounds that wouldn't close. Sickness that spread faster than hope. He wrote the numbers in his ledger. 5,000 at Hardhome. 294 now. The arithmetic of survival didn't require much ink. Tormund helped the last of the free folk off the boat's gripping wrists and shoulders. His people moved like ghosts. No songs, no fights. Just silence and the shuffle of feet on stone. A brother of the watch approached Jon face tight. "Lord Commander wants them counted and sorted." "They're people, not grain," Jon said. "They're mouths we can't feed." Jon closed the ledger. "Then we'll find more food." The brother walked away without saluting. Jon didn't blame him. Fear made men small. Kratos had already disembarked. He stood apart from the crowd, arms crossed, watching the barrier rise in the distance. The ash-white skin made him easy to track. So did the fact that no one went near him. Jon walked over. "We're moving to Castle Black. It's warmer, better provisions." "How far?" "Half a day's march." Kratos said nothing. He kept staring at the ice like it was a problem he was solving in his head. "You fought well at Hardhome," Jon replied. "I didn't fight. I held ground." "Same thing?" "No." Kratos finally turned. His dark eyes were unreadable. "Fighting is what you do when you think you can win. Holding ground is what you do when you know you can't." Jon absorbed that. "We got people out. That's a win. You got some people out. The rest are his now." Jon knew who his meant. The pale figure on the dock, the raised arms, the dead standing in perfect rows. "The Night King," Jon said. Kratos didn't confirm or deny. He just turned back to the wall. "You know something about this," Jon pressed. "About him." "I know what he is." "Then tell me." Kratos exhaled slowly, breath misting in the cold. "You've got men who think walls matter, who think numbers matter, who think if they hold the right ground, they win. And you don't. I know that kind of enemy doesn't care about walls. He cares about breaking what you believe in. Once that's gone, the rest fall." Jon felt the truth of it settle in his chest like a stone. "So what do we do? Stop defending. Start hunting." "Hunt what? An army of the dead. The one who makes them stand up." Jon wanted to argue. Wanted to explain logistic supply lines, the need for consensus. But Kratos had already walked away, heading toward the road that led to Castle Black. Tormund joined Jon, watching the warrior disappear into the snow. "He's not wrong." "I know. But you're not going to do what he says." Jon shook his head. "I can't. I have oaths, responsibilities. And he doesn't. I don't think he cares about oaths." Tormund grunted. "Maybe that's why he's still alive." Castle Black felt smaller than Jon remembered. The yard was crowded with free folk, huddling near fires that didn't give enough warmth. Brothers of the Watch moved between them, distributing soup that looked more like hot water with ambition. The tension was a living thing, coiled tight and waiting to snap. Jon found Sir Alistair Thorne in the Lord Commander's chambers, bent over maps. The older man didn't bother with pleasantries. 294 miles, Thorne said, and winter coming. They'll work, they'll fight, they'll eat. And when the food runs out, they'll take what they need. Jon planted his hands on the table. We went north to save them. We don't abandon them now. You went north against orders. You brought back a disaster. I brought back survivors. You brought back proof that the threat is real. And we're not ready. Thorne straightened. The other Lord Commanders are calling for a council. They want answers. Answers to what? To why you threw away 5,000 lives on wildlings. To why you're asking us to believe in an enemy we can't see. To why... Thorne paused, choosing words carefully. You brought back something worse than what you left behind. John's jaw tightened. If you mean Kratos, I mean a weapon we don't understand and can't control. Where did he come from? Who does he serve? What does he want? He wants the Night King dead. So he says, but men lie snow, especially dangerous men. John wanted to defend Kratos, wanted to say the man had saved lives. But Thorn wasn't entirely wrong. John didn't know where Kratos had come from, didn't know his past, only knew what he'd seen: violence with purpose. He's not our enemy, John said finally. Then what is he? John didn't have an answer. The council convened that night in the Great Hall. Brothers from East Watch, the Shadow Tower, even a few from further south. They sat in a rough circle, faces, hard arms crossed. John recognized the posture. Judgment, not discussion. Kratos hadn't been invited. He'd come anyway. He stood near the door, leaning against the wall, silent as a shadow. Thorn opened the meeting. Jon Snow returned from Hardhome with 300 wildlings and a story. We need to decide what to do with both. Murmurs rippled through the hall. John caught fragments. Waste of resources. Can't trust them. Should have left them to freeze. A ranger from Eastwatch stood. I've heard the stories. Dead men walking, an army that can't be killed. It sounds like fear talking. I saw it, John offered. We all did. You saw whites. We've fought those before. They burn. Not fast enough. Not when there's thousands. Then we hold the wall. The wall won't stop him. The hall went quiet. John felt the weight of their skepticism pressing down. Another voice from the back. What about the stranger, the one with the white skin? John glanced at Kratos. The warrior hadn't moved, hadn't reacted. He fought at Hardhome, John said carefully. Saved lives. Saved some. Could have saved more if he'd tried. He did what needed doing. And what's that, holding a door while thousands died? The ranger shook his head. I've heard stories about him too. People are saying he's cursed. A demon. Something sent by the gods to test us. John bit back frustration. He's a man, that's all. A man doesn't move like that. Doesn't kill like that. Neither does a White Walker, but we're fighting those anyway. The ranger sat down unconvinced. John could see the doubt spreading, fear looking for something to grab onto. And when fear couldn't find the real enemy, it turned inward. That's when Kratos spoke. You done. Every head turned. Kratos pushed off the wall, walking forward until he stood in the center of the circle. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. You want to talk about what I am, where I came from, whether I can be trusted. He paused. I don't care. I'm not here to convince you. Thorn's hand moved to his sword hilt. Then why are you here? To end it. End what? The thing that makes your dead stand up. The Night King. Kratos nodded once. And you think you can kill him? Thorn's voice dripped disbelief. I know I can. How? The same way I've killed everything else that thought it couldn't die. The hall erupted. Men shouted questions, accusations. John tried to restore order, but the noise drowned him out. Kratos didn't flinch. He just waited until the shouting died down to manageable levels. Then he turned to John. You want to sit here and talk, fine. But talking doesn't stop what's coming. He gestured towards the door. That thing out there doesn't negotiate. Doesn't care about your votes or your fears. It just takes. And it'll keep taking until someone cuts it off at the source. And you're that someone, Thorn challenged. I'm the only one who's decided to be. Kratos walked out. The door slammed behind him with a finality that echoed through the hall. John stood in the silence that followed. Every eye was on him now, waiting for him to condemn or defend. He chose neither. "We'll continue this tomorrow," John said. "Right now, people need food and rest." Thorn stepped close as the others filed out. "You're making a mistake trusting him." "I'm not trusting him. I'm using him." "There's a difference." John met his gaze. "There better be." Don't. Later, John found Kratos on the wall itself, staring north into darkness. Snow fell in lazy spirals, settling on the warrior's shoulders without melting. "You didn't help yourself in there," John pressed. "Wasn't trying to. They're afraid of you." "Good. Means they'll stay out of my way." John leaned against the parapet. The fortification stretched east and west, a line of ice that had held for thousands of years. He'd grown up believing in it, believing it was enough. Now he wasn't sure. "It stood since the Age of Heroes," John said. 700 feet of ice and ancient magic." Kratos examined it with the critical eye of someone who'd seen fortifications before. "It's a wall. Walls fall. Not this one. Everything falls if you hit it hard enough or wait long enough." Kratos turned to face him. "You're putting faith in stone and ice. You should be putting it in yourself." "I'm one man." "So am I. You're different." "Because I don't wait for permission to do what needs doing." Kratos shook his head. "That's not different. That's just deciding the cost is worth paying." John wanted to argue, wanted to defend the need for process, for alliances, for doing things the right way. But the image of Hardhome wouldn't leave him. The people who didn't make it to the boats. The Night King raising them all with a gesture. "If we go after him," John ventured slowly, "we'll need an army. Armies are slow and loud and full of people who will run when they see what he is." "Then what do you suggest?" Kratos was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of experience John couldn't fathom. "Find where he's going. Get there first. Make him come to you on ground you choose. Then kill him before he knows you're there." "That's not a battle plan. That's an assassination. It's the only plan that matters." John thought about Night's Watch vows, about honor, about the right way to fight wars. Then he thought about blue eyes in the dark and thousands of dead hands reaching for the living. "I'll think about it," he conceded finally. Kratos nodded, didn't push, just went back to watching the north. John left him there, a pale figure against black stone, waiting for an enemy that hadn't arrived yet. But would. Soon. The wind picked up, carrying whispers of ice and the promise of things that shouldn't move, but did. John pulled his cloak tighter. Kratos didn't move at all. Behind them, Castle Black settled into uneasy sleep. Fires burned low. Guards changed shifts. Life continued with the fragile persistence of men who didn't know how close the end was. John reached his quarters and closed the door. The numbers haunted him. 5,000 to 300. The math didn't lie. Neither did the certainty in Kratos' voice when he said walls fall. John stared at the wall of his own room, stone and mortar, solid and real. He pressed his palm against it. It felt exactly like what it was, just stone. The fight started over soup. A free folk woman reached for a second bowl. A brother of the watch grabbed her wrist. She spat at him. He shoved her back. Someone pulled a knife. John was there before blood hit stone-long claw, half-drawn voice cutting through the mess. "Enough." The yard went quiet. 30 pairs of eyes locked on him, waiting to see which side he'd take. That was the trap. Pick one, lose both. You, Jon pointed at the brother. Back to your post. Lord Commander your post. Now. The man went jaw tight with resentment. Jon turned to the woman. She was younger than he'd thought, maybe 20. Hunger made her face sharp. There's more soup, Jon told her. You don't need to fight for it. Everything here's a fight, she replied in the thick accent of the far north. Your man made it one, and you finished it. She met his gaze without flinching. Would you rather I starved polite? Jon couldn't answer that, because she was right, and they both knew it. He let her take the second bowl. Around the commons, tension coiled tighter. This wouldn't be the last time. Maybe not even the last today. Davos Seaworth appeared at his elbow, still more guest than brother, a kingsman who'd stayed when Stannis marched south. His voice came low. We've got 300 mouths and stores for maybe 2. I know the numbers. Numbers don't care if you know them. They just run out. Jon watched the free folk huddle near fires that barely pushed back the cold. Children who'd seen their parents die. Warriors who'd lost entire clans. They'd crossed the wall believing Jon's promise of safety. He'd kept them alive for 3 days. That was all. Send ravens to the other castles, Jon said. Ask for supplies. Ask or beg. Whatever gets them to answer. Davos nodded and left. Jon knew what the response would be. Silence or worse demands. The Watch didn't help each other out of kindness. They traded favors like merchants traded coin. Kratos stood in the shadow of the armory, watching everything with the stillness of someone who'd seen this kind of collapse before. Jon crossed to him. They'll tear each other apart before the dead arrive, Jon said. Then stop them. How execute the first one who draws a blade that makes me the tyrant? Makes you the one still standing when it's over. Jon shook his head. That's not how this works. It's exactly how it works. You just don't want to see it. Kratos gestured toward the grounds. They're waiting for you to choose. Who eats? Who freezes? Who lives when supplies run dry? You think kindness solves that. I think cruelty makes it worse. Cruelty and necessity look the same when you're the one making the choice. Jon wanted to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. Because Kratos wasn't wrong. Leadership meant picking who suffered. Pretending otherwise was a lie people told themselves to sleep better. What would you do? Jon pressed. I'm not the one who swore oaths. That's not an answer. Kratos turned to face him fully. You want my answer? Cut the people you can't feed loose. Give them weapons and dragon glass. Let them take their chances beyond the ice. Some will live. Most won't. But you'll have saved the ones you can actually protect. The suggestion landed like a punch. You're talking about sending them to die. I'm talking about not pretending you can save everyone. And if I refuse, then you'll watch them all starve together. Very noble. Very dead. Jon felt anger flare. You don't understand. I understand that you're playing at mercy when you should be calculating cost. Kratos' voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Be effective or be dead. When the real fight comes, that's all that separates survivors from corpses. He walked away before Jon could respond. And the Raven arrived at midday. Black wings against gray sky, circling twice before landing on the Maesaider's tower. Jon climbed the steps with dread already settling in his gut. Maester Aemon held out the scroll without preamble. His clouded eyes saw more than most men with perfect vision. "From the Shadow Tower," Aemon said. "You won't like it?" Jon unrolled the parchment. The words were formal cold. "Lord Commander Snow, your request for provisions is noted. Our stores are low. Winter presses hard, even here. We cannot spare what we do not have. Furthermore, questions have been raised regarding recent decisions. Bringing wildlings across the wall, harboring an unknown warrior, acting without broader counsel. These matters require review. Send word of your intentions. The Watch requires unity, not unilateral action." Jon read it twice. The message underneath the words was clear. Justify yourself or be replaced. "They're blaming me for Hardhome," Jon said. "They're afraid," Aemon corrected. "Fear looks for someone to punish. I saved 300 lives. You lost 5,000. To men sitting behind walls in warm rooms? That's failure." Jon crushed the parchment in his fist. "What do they want? Proof? They want the threat to go away. Since it won't, they'll settle for making you go away." The Meister's words hung in the cold air. Jon had faced betrayal before, survived a knife in the dark through luck and Melisandre's god. But this wasn't betrayal. This was politics. Slower, quieter, just as deadly. "What would you do?" Jon questioned. Aemon smiled, thin and knowing. "I'd ask what you're willing to sacrifice to keep the people you've already saved alive." Before Jon could answer, shouting erupted from below. He ran. Done. By the time Jon reached the yard, a crowd had formed. At the center, two men circled each other. A Watch brother, older, scarred. A free folk warrior, younger, angry. Both had blades drawn. "Stand down," Jon shouted. Neither moved. The Watch brother snarled, "He touched my sister." "I asked her name," the wildling shot back. "That's all. Your crows see insult in everything." "Put the weapons away," Jon ordered. "Both of you." "He drew first," the wildling protested. "I don't care who started it. I care who ends it." They didn't lower their blades. The crowd pressed closer, fracturing into sides. Jon saw it happening, the space splitting, one wrong word from erupting into bloodshed. Then Kratos stepped between the two men. He didn't draw a weapon, didn't speak, just stood there close enough that both fighters would have to go through him to reach each other. The Watch brother's hand trembled. "Move!" Kratos didn't. "I said move." Kratos reached out and took the blade from the man's hand. Not roughly, not violently, just took it the way you'd take a stick from a child. The Watch brother tried to resist. Might as well have tried to move a mountain. Kratos handed the blade to Jon, then took the wildling's knife the same way and gave that over too. The crowd went silent. "Next one who draws steel gets worse than disarmed," Jon said, voice carrying across the courtyard. "Understand?" No one answered. But they understood. The crowd dispersed. Jon exhaled slowly, realizing he'd been holding his breath. "Thank you," he said to Kratos. "Don't. I didn't do it for them." "Then why?" "Because if they kill each other now, there's fewer bodies when the real enemy arrives." Always practical, always calculating. Jon wondered if Kratos had ever done anything just because it was right, not because it was useful. Probably not. That night, a rider arrived from the south. Not a brother of the Watch, a messenger wearing colors Jon didn't recognize. Private courier hired by someone with money. He'd come through Eastwatch with papers and coin, been searched twice before they let him pass the gate. The man delivered his message to Davos, who brought it straight to John. "You need to read this," Davos said. The letter was written on fine parchment sealed with wax that smelled of perfume. Southern, expensive, to the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Word has reached the capital of strange events in the north. A massacre at Hardhome, an army of dead men, and a warrior unlike any in the Seven Kingdoms. These are troubling reports. The Crown has interest in understanding the truth. More importantly, certain parties would pay handsomely for access to this warrior. Name your price. Send your terms. We can be generous to those who cooperate. No signature, no house seal, just an offer wrapped in velvet threads. They want to buy Kratos, John said flatly. Or they want you to think they do. Could be a test. See if you're for sale. John crumpled the letter. I'm not selling anything. Good. Because the next letter won't ask nice. John knew Davos was right. Whoever sent this had heard rumors and wanted to turn them into tools. That's what power did. It saw everything as a resource to exploit. Does Kratos know? John asked. I didn't tell him, but men like that, they always know when someone's hunting them. John found Kratos on the fortification again, same spot as before. The warrior stood at the edge staring into the darkness beyond the ice. Snow settled on his shoulders. He didn't bother brushing it off. Someone wants to buy you, John said without preamble. Let them try. I'm serious. This is dangerous. If the wrong people get interested, I've had kings, gods, and worse try to own me. They're all dead. The certainty in his voice wasn't arrogance. It was history. John leaned against the parapet. Out there somewhere in the black, the Night King was gathering. Building. Waiting. Davos thinks more letters are coming, John said. Threats. Demands. They will. And they don't matter. None of this matters. Kratos gestured at the ice barrier at Castle Black, at the politics and posturing. They're still pretending this is about territory, about power. It's not. Then what's it about? Survival. And whether you're willing to do what survival costs. John thought about the fight in the yard. The letter from the Shadow Tower. The offer to sell Kratos like livestock. Everything pulling in different directions, every choice wrong in some way. How do you decide? John's voice came quiet. When every option is terrible. Kratos was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight that felt ancient. You stop looking for the good choice. You find the one you can live with after. Then you live with it. John wanted to believe there was a better way. A path that didn't require compromise or sacrifice, or accepting that some people would die so others could live. But standing on the wall, with winter closing in and enemies gathering in the dark, he couldn't find it. Below them, Castle Black settled into restless sleep. Fires burned low. Guards changed shifts with hands that shook from cold or fear or both. And far to the north, beyond sight but not beyond, knowing something gathered in the frozen waste. Kratos spoke again, quieter now. He's testing. Testing what? How long you'll wait, how much you'll tolerate, when you'll break. Kratos' eyes never left the horizon. He's not in a hurry. He doesn't need to be. Time's on his side. How much time do we have? Less than you think, more than you fear. Kratos turned to leave, but when he comes, he won't come slow. John stayed on the wall after Kratos descended. The night pressed close, thick with unspoken questions and approaching answers. Somewhere out there, the dead were counting their strength. Here, the living counted their doubts. John wondered which would run out first. The dog stopped barking first. Reek had been standing watch on the eastern parapet for 6 hours, and the hounds below had been restless the whole time, snarling at shadows, whining at wind. Then all at once they went silent. He leaned over the edge, peering down. The kennels sat dark and still. The dogs huddled together, heads, low ears, flat, not asleep, afraid. Reek turned back to the north. The wind had shifted. It came from ahead now, instead of behind, carrying cold that bit through leather and fur like teeth. His torch guttered. He had to shield the flame with his body to keep it alive. Something moved in the distance, not close. Far out on the ice field where the moonlight turned everything pale and uncertain. A line of shapes, too straight to be natural, too still to be living. Reek counted. 20, 30. More appearing as his eyes adjusted. They stood in formation, patient as stones just beyond the range where an arrow would carry. Waiting. He didn't call out, didn't sound alarm, because what would he say? The dead are standing there watching. They'd think him mad or drunk, so he stayed quiet and watched them watch the fortification. And the cold kept getting worse. John found out at dawn. The relief guard came down from the eastern section, face pale, words tumbling over each other. There's out there, they're just standing. Slow down, John ordered. What did you see? Dead men. Dozens of them. Maybe more. They're not attacking. They're just there. John climbed to the parapet. The sun was rising behind him, casting long shadows across the ice. In that light, he could see them clearly. 100 whites stood in perfect rows below the barrier. Silent, unmoving. Close enough that John could make out the blue glow of their eyes. They'd been there all night. Tormund joined him, breathing hard from the climb. He stared at the formation, then spat over the edge. That's new, Tormund muttered. They've never come this close before, John replied. Not without attacking. They're not here to attack. Both men turned. Kratos had arrived without sound, standing a few paces back. He studied the dead below with the expression of someone reading a message. Then what are they doing? John demanded. Measuring. John's hand tightened on the stone. Measuring what? You, this place. How afraid you are. How long you'll wait. Kratos moved to the edge, looking down at the gathered whites. He's testing your limits. The Night King. He wants to know what breaks you. Fear, starvation, each other. Kratos gestured at the formation. So he sends pieces, watches how you respond, learns. Tormund cursed in the old tongue. We should burn them. With what? John shot back. Arrows won't reach. Oil won't either, not from this height. Then we go down there and what fight 100 whites while 1,000 more wait in the trees? John shook his head. That's what he wants. To thin us out. Make us waste strength on gestures. Kratos gave John a look that might have been approval. Might have been resignation. Hard to tell. So we do nothing. Tormund's frustration bled through every word. We don't give him what he wants, John replied. We hold position. Below, the whites remained motionless, a crowd of corpses performing patience. John left guards on watch and descended. His hands shook on the ladder, not from cold. Thanks. The council met again that afternoon. Different room, same tension. Sir Alistair Thorne had brought 2 other commander's men who'd arrived overnight from deeper south along the ice. You've lost control, Thorne declared without preamble. Wildlings rioting, resources depleted. And now the dead are at our doorstep. They've been at our doorstep for months, John countered. We just didn't see them. Because you were too busy bringing them across. One of the other commanders, a thick man with a scarred jaw, leaned forward. 300 mouths. 300 problems. 300 fighters. 300 thieves who'll cut our throats the moment supplies run dry. The man's voice hardened. Send them back, while we still can. John felt the argument closing around him like a trap. Send them where north to die. Better them than us. Davos cleared his throat from the corner. That's cold, even for the Watch. The Watch swore to protect the realms of men, Thorn said, not wildlings. They're men, John insisted. They're enemies who happen to be running the same direction as us. Thorn placed both hands on the table. I'm calling for a vote. We expel the wildlings immediately. Those in favor. 2 hands rose, then a third, then 2 more. John's stomach dropped. You can't. We can, and we are. Thorn stood. You brought them here, Lord Commander. You're welcome to leave with them. The room erupted. Voices shouting over each other. Chairs scraping hands, reaching for hilts that shouldn't be drawn, but might be. John stood frozen. Everything he'd fought for collapsing in real time. Then Kratos spoke from the doorway. You're about to make a mistake. Every head turned. The warrior stood with arms crossed, expression unreadable. This doesn't concern you, Thorn snapped. It does when your stupidity gets people killed. Kratos walked into the room. Not aggressive, just inevitable. You want to throw out 300 fighters right before a war. That's not strategy. That's panic. We don't need lessons from... You need to understand what's coming. Kratos' voice cut clean through Thorn's bluster. Those things outside, they're not the army. They're the scouts. When the real force arrives, every sword matters. Every body that can hold a line matters. And if we can't feed them, the scarred commander challenged, then you find food, or you ration tighter, or you make the hard choices that don't involve throwing away assets. Kratos looked at each man in turn. But you don't give your enemy free reinforcements. Silence settled heavy and uncomfortable. Thorn's jaw worked. The vote stands. Then you're fools. Kratos turned to John. You staying with fools, or you doing what needs doing? John felt every eye on him. The weight of the cloak, the weight of the oath. The weight of 300 lives he'd promised safety. He made his choice. The wildlings stay. John's voice came out steady. Anyone who doesn't like it can leave. That's not how this works, Thorn began. It is now. John met his gaze without flinching. I'm Lord Commander. The decision is mine. They stay. Thorn's face went red. You'll regret this. Probably. John didn't look away. But I'll regret it with my conscience intact. The council dissolved into angry muttering. Men left in clusters, shooting dark looks at John and Kratos both. When the room cleared, Davos approached. That was brave, also possibly suicidal. Felt more like necessary, John admitted. Necessary doesn't keep you warm at night when half the Watch wants you dead. John knew, but he'd made the call, and he'd stand by it. That evening, a runner came from Eastwatch by the sea. The message was short. Brutal. Patrol missing. Sent north 2 days ago. Found their camp. No bodies, no blood. Only drag marks leading to the water. Ice forming faster than season allows. Something's wrong. John read it twice, then handed it to Davos. "It's starting," Davos said quietly. "It's been starting. We just keep pretending it hasn't." John found Kratos in the armory, checking the edge on a blade he'd requisitioned. The warrior tested it against his thumb, unsatisfied, and set it aside. "Eastwatch sent word," John said. "Men disappearing, ice spreading." Kratos didn't look up. "Told you, he's gathering." "How much time before?" "Before what? Before he attacks. Before your fortification falls." Kratos finally met John's eyes. "Time's already gone. This is the countdown. You're just hearing it now." John felt the weight of that settle. "What do we do?" "You hold here. Keep your people alive as long as possible. I go north." "Alone." "That was always the plan." "That's not a plan. That's suicide." Kratos smiled without humor. "I've died before. Didn't take." John wanted to argue, but something in the warrior's certainty made argument feel pointless. This man had walked into Hardhome and walked out. Had faced gods, if his words were true. Maybe suicide for him looked different than it did for normal men. "When," John finally managed. "Soon, when I know where he is." Kratos picked up another blade, tested it, nodded. "But first, I need to see something." "See what?" "How close they're willing to come." Midnight found them on the eastern parapet again. John Tormund, a handful of guards. And Kratos, standing at the very edge, staring down. The whites were still there, more of them now. 200, maybe 3. They'd moved closer. Not attacking, just advancing meter by meter, testing boundaries. "They're learning the ground," Kratos observed. "For what? For when it matters." One of the guards raised a crossbow. "Should I?" "No," John ordered. "Save the bolts." But the guard's hand trembled on the trigger. Fear looking for outlet. Then the cold came. Worse than before. Worse than Hardhome. The temperature plummeted so fast that John's breath crystallized mid-exhale. Frost spread across stone like infection. And in the distance, a figure appeared. Tall, pale, crowned in ice that caught moonlight and twisted it into something sharp. The Night King. He stood at the back of the formation, surrounded by white walkers. He looked up at the defenders on the ice barrier. And he raised one hand. Every white moved forward 10 paces. Perfect unison, perfect silence. The Night King lowered his hand. They stopped. He was giving orders, demonstrating control, showing John and everyone watching that this army moved as one mind, wearing 1,000 bodies. "Kratos," John breathed. I know what he's doing." Kratos' voice was ice. "He's telling you the truth." "What truth?" Kratos turned to face John fully. The warrior's eyes held something dark and knowing. "That your fortification doesn't matter. That your numbers don't matter. That everything you're counting on to save you." He gestured at the massive structure beneath their feet. "It's already lost. You just haven't admitted it yet." Below, the Night King stood among his dead patient as winter itself. Above, men clutched weapons that suddenly felt small. And between them, 700 feet of ice that had stood for thousands of years, felt for the first time like nothing more than a delay. John's hands gripped the stone parapet hard enough to hurt. "How long?" he managed. "Until he breaks it, or until you break." Kratos didn't wait for answer. Either way, not long enough. The Night King remained visible for another minute. Then he turned and walked back into the darkness, his army following like shadows. The whites at the base of the structure stayed, watching, waiting, counting. John descended from the parapet with legs that barely held him. Around him, men whispered prayers to gods who felt very far away. Kratos followed in silence, a weapon that knew its purpose, waiting for the moment to be unleashed. And in the north, something vast and patient and utterly certain prepared to teach the living what winter truly meant. The ice began cracking at midnight. Not loud, not sudden, just a low grinding sound that started in the east and spread like a whisper through stone. The guards heard it first, a creaking deep in the barrier's core as if something ancient was waking up wrong. Marek pressed his ear against the frozen surface. The sound vibrated through his skull. Not the normal settling of ice. This was different. Hungry. He pulled back and his breath caught. Frost patterns spread across the structure's face, intricate as spiderwebs growing faster than nature allowed. The ice wasn't melting. It was changing, becoming brittle, fragile. "Get the Lord Commander," Marek told the nearest brother. "Now." But by the time John arrived, it was already too late. The eastern section didn't explode. It didn't shatter dramatically. It simply gave up. 100 feet of ancient ice, 700 feet tall, just stopped being solid. The structural integrity died like a candle flame in wind. One moment barrier, next moment collapse. The sound was worse than thunder, worse than avalanche. It was finality made audible. John watched from the western parapet as the eastern fortification crumbled into itself, sending up a cloud of ice dust that turned the night white. Through the settling haze, he saw them. Thousands of whites flooding through the gap like water through a broken dam, silent, efficient, unstoppable. The dead had their path south. "And everyone south now." John's voice cut through the chaos. "Don't fight them. Run." The Watch brothers and free folks scattered. Some grabbed weapons out of reflex. Others just ran. A few froze entirely, minds unable to process what they were seeing. Tormund appeared at John's side axe in one fist. "We can hold the western." "No." John grabbed his shoulder. "We can't. Look." Tormund followed his gaze. The whites weren't attacking the remaining sections. They were simply walking past, flowing south like a tide that had finally found its outlet. "He's not here for the fortification," John realized aloud. He never was. Kratos materialized beside them. No surprise in his expression, just grim confirmation. "Told you," was all he offered. "How much time do we have?" John demanded. "To do what the barrier's gone. Time's irrelevant." Kratos scanned the flood of corpses. "You need to decide where you're making your stand. Here, isn't it?" And John's mind raced through options. Castle Black couldn't hold against that number. The Shadow Tower was too far west. Eastwatch was already overrun. "Winterfell," he said. Kratos nodded once. "Then move." Getting 300 people out of Castle Black should have been organized. Should have been orderly. It wasn't. Panic spread faster than orders. People shoved toward the southern gate, crushing against each other. A woman fell. 3 people trampled her before John could reach her. She didn't get up. "Form lines," Davos shouted, trying to create structure from chaos. "Children first, then." A brother of the Watch punched a wildling who'd grabbed the same horse. The wildling punched back. Suddenly, 10 people were fighting over mounts while whites closed the distance. John drew Longclaw. Not to fight the dead, to restore order among the living. Next person who throws a punch gets left behind. The threat hung in the cold air. "You hear me? We move together, or we die alone. The fighting stopped. Barely. Jon organized them into groups. Fastest first to scout. Slowest in the middle with protection. Fighters at the rear to buy time. The rear guard. Jon knew most of them wouldn't make it. He picked volunteers. No one argued. They knew the mathematics of survival. One of them, a young brother named Gren, gripped Jon's arm. "Lord Commander, it's been an honor." Jon couldn't speak. He just clasped the boy's shoulder and moved on. That's when Sir Alistair Thorne appeared, face twisted with rage and something that looked like satisfaction. "This is your fault," Thorne hissed. "You brought the wildlings. You let that monster stay. You ignored every warning." "Not now," Jon said, pushing past him. Thorne grabbed his arm. "The Watch will know you caused this. History will remember Jon Snow as the man who broke the..." Kratos' hand closed on Thorne's wrist. Not violently. Just there, suddenly, like a trap springing shut. "Let go," Kratos said quietly. "This doesn't concern..." Kratos squeezed. Something in Thorne's wrist made a sound it shouldn't. The older man went pale. "He's busy keeping people alive," Kratos continued in that same flat tone. "You're busy assigning blame. One of those matters right now. Guess which?" He released Thorne, who stumbled back, cradling his wrist. "Kill him later," Kratos added. "If you live." Thorne retreated into the crowd, shooting looks that promised future violence. Davos sidled up to Jon. Making friends everywhere? Wasn't planning on living long enough to need them. Dark thought. Honest thought. The evacuation continued. Supplies loaded onto carts. Weapons distributed. Maps checked and rechecked. Jon made the call he'd been dreading. "Burn the stores," he ordered. "Everything we can't carry." "Lord Commander, that's keeping them from feeding their army with our food." Jon's jaw set. "Do it." Smoke began rising from the supply buildings. A year's worth of grain turning to ash, because leaving it meant giving the enemy strength. Every choice cost something. Jon was learning to count in losses. The column moved south just before dawn. 300 souls, maybe less now, moving as fast as fear could push them. Behind them, Castle Black burned. Jon had given that order too. Better to deny the enemy shelter than leave them a fortress. The Whites followed. Not rushing, not attacking, just maintaining pace, patient as death itself. Kratos walked near the rear eyes, constantly scanning their pursuers. He was calculating something. Jon could see it in the way the warrior measured distances, tested sightlines. "You're planning something," Jon said, falling into step beside him. "Always." "Care to share? I'm going to buy you time." Jon's stomach clenched. "You mean..." "I mean I'm going to collapse that ridge." Kratos pointed to a narrow pass ahead. "Force them to go around. Adds a day to their march." "You can't do that alone. Watch me." "Kratos." The warrior stopped walking, met Jon's eyes with something that might have been respect or might have been pity. "You did what you could. You saved who you could save. Now you need to get them somewhere defensible." He gestured south. "There's a boy in Winterfell. The one who sees things. That's where the real fight happens." Jon wanted to argue, wanted to demand Kratos stay with the column, but the logic was irrefutable. They needed time, and Kratos could buy it. "How will you find us?" "I'll find him first." Kratos' meaning was clear, the Night King. "When that's done, you won't need to worry about what's following you. And if you can't, then it won't matter where you are." Kratos turned and walked back toward the pursuing tide of corpses. No ceremony, no speech, just a weapon moving toward its purpose. Tormund watched him go, shaking his head. That man's either the bravest bastard I've ever seen, or the maddest. Both, Jon said quietly. Definitely both. The ridge collapsed an hour later. Jon heard it from 2 miles away, a roar of stone and ice that echoed through the mountains. When he climbed to high ground and looked back, he saw the pass completely blocked. Tons of rock creating a barrier that would take days to clear or circumvent. Kratos was nowhere to be seen, either buried under the collapse or already moving north by another route. Jon chose to believe the latter. The column pressed on. Children cried. Adults stayed grimly silent. Every mile south was a mile away from death, but no one felt safe. That night they made camp in a frozen wood. No fires. Couldn't risk the smoke. Davos found Jon sitting apart from the others, staring north. Thinking about Kratos. Thinking about all of them. Gren, the brothers at the rear, everyone we left. You couldn't save them all. Doesn't make it easier. Davos sat beside him. Being Lord Commander never does. You make impossible choices with incomplete information and hope you're wrong less often than you're right. Jon looked at him. How do you live with it? Badly, but I live. Davos pulled his cloak tighter. And so do the people you saved. That has to count for something. Jon wanted to believe that. Wanted to think the math of survival justified the cost. He wasn't sure it did. A runner approached one of the scouts. Lord Commander, message from Winterfell. They've heard about the breach. They're preparing defenses. Tell them we're coming. And tell them... Jon paused. How did you summarize the end of the world in a message? Tell them the enemy is real. Tell them to fortify everything. And tell them there's a boy there who matters. Keep him safe. The runner nodded and left. Tormund joined the fireless circle. If we push hard, we reach Winterfell in 5 days, maybe 4. And if they push hard, Jon gestured north, then we pray your monster friend bought us enough time. Jon thought about Kratos, about a man who'd walked into Hardhome and held ground, who'd faced gods and won, who'd looked at an army of the dead and seen only an obstacle between him and a target. If anyone could slow the Night King, it was him. If. 3 days into the march, the temperature dropped again. Sharper than before, meaner. The free folk felt it first. They'd grown up in the far north, knew cold the way sailors knew storms. This wasn't normal winter. He's close, one of the elders muttered. The pale one. You can feel him in the wind. Jon felt it too. A pressure against his chest, a wrongness in the air. They were being hunted. But when scouts checked their back trail, they found nothing. No whites, no White Walkers, just empty snow and that terrible patient cold. Where are they? Tormund growled. Jon studied the horizon. Kratos bought us time, or they're taking a different route, or it's a trap, Davos finished. They're letting us run to Winterfell because that's where they want to fight. The thought settled like ice in Jon's gut. Bran. The three-eyed raven. The boy who saw everything. That's what the Night King wanted. Not the fortification. Not the watch. The memory of the world. We keep moving, Jon decided. But send riders ahead. Warn Winterfell. Tell them to make that castle a fortress. The column pushed harder. Fear made good fuel when supplies ran low. On the 5th day, they saw it. Winterfell rose from the snow like a promise. solid, ancient, real. The gates opened. People rushed out to help to carry children to guide the column inside. John dismounted and felt his knees nearly buckle. 5 days of running. 5 days of looking over his shoulder. 5 days of carrying the weight of every person who didn't make it. A Meister approached. "Lord Commander Snow, the Starks are gathering the Northern Lords. They want to hear everything." John nodded numbly. "I'll tell them. But first, is there a boy here, Bran Stark?" "Yes. He's in the Godswood. Keep him there. Guard him, whatever it costs." The Meister looked confused, but didn't argue. John walked into Winterfell, leaving the frozen North behind. But the North wasn't done with him, not yet. Somewhere out there, beyond the broken barrier, beyond the collapsed pass, an army marched south with the patience of winter itself. And somewhere else, a warrior with ash-white skin hunted the thing that commanded them. Two forces racing toward the same ending. John just hoped one of them arrived first. The gates of Winterfell closed behind the last refugee. The sound echoed like a tomb ceiling. Outside, snow began to fall. Thick, heavy, relentless. Winter had come, and it wasn't asking permission. Winterfell had room for 500. John brought 300 refugees. By the second day, it felt like 3,000. The great hall overflowed. Stables doubled as barracks. The kitchens ran empty by midday, refilled by nightfall, empty again by morning. People slept in shifts because there weren't enough beds. Arguments erupted over blankets, over space, over soup that had been stretched so thin it was barely water. John spent the first 3 days putting out fires that weren't made of flame. A free folk woman stabbed a Winterfell guard who'd tried to drag her from the corner she'd claimed. John had to mediate. Both sides wanted blood. He gave them rations instead and ordered them to opposite ends of the castle. A northern lord, some minor house with a name John couldn't remember, demanded the wildlings be expelled. "They'll eat us out of winter stores." "So will everyone else," John replied, "unless you're offering to leave." The lord went quiet. Another night, another problem. A group of brothers from the Watch tried to desert. Davos caught them at the gate. John had them stripped of cloaks and put to work digging trenches. No executions. Couldn't spare the hands. "This isn't a refuge," John told the gathered refugees on the third evening. His voice carried across the packed courtyard. "This is a fortress. Everyone works, everyone fights, or everyone dies. Those are the terms." No one cheered, but no one argued. The War Council met in the Lord's Chamber. Northern Lords Jon Davos Tormund representing the Free Folk. Sansa Stark presided, her face a mask of political calculation. Lord Glover spoke first, his frustration barely contained. "The barrier has fallen. Thousands of dead march south, and you bring us 300 mouths we can't feed." 300 swords, John corrected. Wildling swords, northern swords. What's the difference when we're all starving? "The difference is we'll starve fighting instead of running." Another lord, Serwyn John thought, leaned forward. "You had one job, Lord Commander. Hold the ice. You failed." The accusation hung heavy. John felt the weight of 300 miles of broken promises behind him. "The barrier was never going to hold," he stated flatly. "Not against what's coming." "Then what was the point?" Glover demanded. "Thousands of years, thousands of men, all for nothing." "The point was buying time," Davos interjected, "which we did. Now we spend it wisely or waste it arguing." Sansa's voice cut through the rising tension. "The question isn't what fell, It's what we do now. John appreciated the redirect. Sansa had learned politics the hard way by surviving people better at it than her. We fortify, John said. Dig trenches, stockpile weapons, prepare for siege. Siege? Lord Serwyn's voice dripped skepticism. Against an enemy that doesn't eat, doesn't tire. How do you siege that? You don't, John admitted. You fight until they stop coming. And when do they stop? John glanced at Davos. Neither had an answer that wouldn't sound insane. Sansa filled the silence. We have reports of a warrior. The one from Hardhome. Where is he? Gone north, John said carefully. Hunting. Hunting what? The one commanding them. The room went quiet. Lord Glover recovered first. One man against that? He's not just one man, Tormund offered from his corner. I've seen what he does. If anyone can... Hope isn't strategy, Glover interrupted. We need plans, not myths. John wanted to defend Kratos, wanted to explain what the warrior represented, but he knew how it sounded. A stranger with impossible strength claiming he could kill death itself. So he moved past it. There's something else, John said. The boy, Bran Stark. The enemy wants him. Sansa's expression didn't change, but John saw her fingers tighten on the armrest. How do you know? Because everything points to it. The timing, the direction. If the Night King just wanted to kill everyone, he'd spread out, burn villages, slaughter indiscriminately. John paused. But he's coming here. Straight line, no deviation. Why? Serwyn demanded. John didn't have a good answer. Only Bran's words from that morning. I'm the world's memory. He wants to erase it. It doesn't matter why, John said instead. What matters is we use it. Glover's eyes narrowed. Use it how? We put Bran in the Godswood. We guard him. And when the Night King comes for what he wants, you want to use a crippled boy as bait. Glover's voice rose. That's your plan. He's not bait, John corrected, echoing what Kratos had taught him. He's the target. We're the bait. The enemy comes for him. We kill the enemy. And if we fail, then Bran dies with everyone else. At least this way, we choose where it happens. The council erupted. Half wanted to abandon Bran, send him away. By time. Half wanted to hide him, protect him, deny the enemy what it wanted. Sansa let them argue for exactly 1 minute. Then she stood. Silence fell. My brother stays, she declared. We prepare the Godswood. We guard it properly. And when the dead come, we meet them on ground we've chosen. Her gaze swept the room. Any lord who disagrees can leave now. Take your men. Go south. Die running if you prefer. No one moved. Good. Sansa sat. Lord Snow, what do you need? Bran sat in his wheeled chair near the heart tree, staring at nothing that others could see. John approached slowly, boots crunching through old snow. They're fighting about you, John said. They're fighting about themselves, Bran replied without looking away from the tree. I'm just the excuse. John had no counter to that. You know what we're asking. I know what you need me to do. And I'll do it. Bran finally turned his head. His eyes held that unnerving distance they'd had since he became whatever he was now. He will come for me. Nothing you do changes that. Better to control where than to let him choose. John crouched beside the chair. You're not afraid? Fear is for people who don't know the ending. Bran's voice carried no emotion. I've seen how this goes, many times, in many ways. This is the version where we try. That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be. John stood. His brother, or the thing wearing his brother's face, had never felt farther away. "We'll keep you safe," John promised anyway. Bran almost smiled. "You'll try." That night, John found Theon Greyjoy in the armory, checking arrows one by one. "Winterfell needs every bow," John observed. "Winterfell needs every shot to count," Theon replied. His hands trembled slightly, not from cold, from memory. "I've already failed the Starks once, won't do it again." "Bran forgave you." "Bran doesn't forgive. He just doesn't care anymore." Theon set down an arrow, picked up another. "But I care. So I'll stand where he tells me to stand. And I'll die if that's what it takes." John recognized the look. A man who'd made peace with his ending. "The gods would then," John confirmed. "You'll be first line." "Good." Theon's jaw set. "Let them come." On the 5th day, the scouts stopped returning. Not killed, just gone. They'd ride north in the morning. By evening, nothing. No bodies, no horses, no signs of struggle, just absence. On the 6th day, the temperature dropped. Not gradually, not naturally. It plummeted between heartbeats, turning breath to crystals and water to ice in moments. Birds fell from the sky, frozen mid-flight. The great fire in the hall required twice the wood to stay lit. And from the northern watchtower, a guard reported something that made John's blood cold. "Riders on the horizon, but they're not moving." John climbed to see for himself. There, perhaps 2 miles out, a line of figures on horseback, too pale to be living, too still to be real. White walkers, dozens of them, just watching. "They're not attacking," Tormund observed. "They're announcing," John corrected, "letting us know they're here." Davos joined them, breathing hard from the climb. "How long do we have?" John studied the frozen tableau. The patience in that stillness was worse than any charge. "Hours," he said finally. "Maybe less. They're waiting for full dark." "Why?" "Because that's when fear works best." Below Winterfell prepared, trenches dug, oil barrels positioned, fighters taking stations. John descended and found Sansa organizing the civilians, children, elderly, wounded. She was directing them to the crypts with calm efficiency. "If they break through," John began. "They won't," Sansa interrupted, "because you won't let them." John wished he had her certainty. "And if Kratos... If your warrior succeeds, we live. If he fails, none of this mattered anyway." Sansa met his gaze. "Stop looking for rescue. We're all we have." She was right, as always. John made one final circuit of the defenses, checked the trenches, counted arrows, verified positions. Everything that could be done was done. Now they waited. The sun set early, swallowed by clouds thick as wool. Darkness came, and with it the cold that wasn't cold, the pressure that wasn't wind, the certainty that something vast and patient had finally decided to collect what it was owed. John stood on the battlement's Longclaw at his hip, surrounded by people who trusted him to save them. He prayed Kratos was better at hunting than John was at defending, because if the warrior failed to find the Night King first, this fortress would become a tomb. The northern horizon glowed faintly. Not fire, something else. Something blue and terrible and hungry. They were coming, not marching, arriving. Winter had finally reached Winterfell, and it wasn't asking to be let in. The silence came first. Not peace, not calm. Just the absence of everything that made noise. Wind died. Branches stopped creaking. Even breath seemed to vanish before it left lips. Then the dogs stopped barking. Every hound in Winterfell went quiet at once. Not cowering, not hiding. Just silent heads low staring north. Jon felt it in his chest. A pressure, a wrongness. "Archers ready," he called from the battlements. Below, 300 fighters gripped weapons with hands that wanted to shake. Wildlings and Northmen shoulder to shoulder. The watch mixed among them, unity forged by necessity. The darkness ahead shifted, not movement, just less empty than before. Then the first white stepped into torchlight, then 100 more, then thousands. They didn't charge, they walked, patient as stones, eyes burning blue in the dark, a tide of corpses advancing at the speed of certainty. "Hold," Jon commanded. "Wait for range." Someone loosed early. The arrow disappeared into the mass without effect. "Hold," Jon's voice cracked like a whip. The dead reached the first trench, oil-filled, ready to burn. "Now!" Jon shouted. Flaming arrows fell. The trench erupted, a wall of fire 30 feet high, stretching east to west. For a heartbeat, Jon thought it might work. Then corpses walked into the flames. They didn't flinch, didn't scream, just kept coming, bodies igniting as they crossed. The ones in front burned. The ones behind used them as bridges. Charred corpses stacking into ramps of meat and bone. The fire slowed them. It didn't stop them. "Second trench," someone shouted. But the second trench was already being crossed the same way. Bodies piling, paths forming, the dead building their own siege works from their own losses. Jon felt his strategy crumbling in real time. Archers target the ones building bridges. It helped. Barely. For every corpse they dropped, 5 more filled the gap. The outer courtyard began to fill. Somewhere north of Winterfell, Kratos crouched in frozen brush, watching a White Walker lead a column of undead west. Not toward the castle, away from it. He'd been tracking the Night King's force for 3 days, following the cold that wasn't weather, the absence that ate sound, the tracks that appeared in snow that shouldn't hold footprints. And he'd noticed a pattern. The main army moved south, but pieces kept splitting off. Small groups, deliberate diversions, like a commander leaving doors open while closing others. Kratos studied the White Walker. Tall, ancient, moving with the confidence of something that had never lost. He waited until the column passed. Then he moved, silent, fast, a shadow with purpose. The White Walker didn't sense him until Kratos was already there. By then it was too late. Kratos grabbed the creature's head and wrenched sideways. The crack echoed through trees. The walker exploded into frozen shards that scattered like broken glass. They collapsed instantly. Strings cut. Kratos examined the remains, looking for direction, for intent. The pieces pointed southeast, not straight south to Winterfell's front gate. Around. "He's splitting his focus," Kratos muttered. Which meant the obvious attack was a distraction. Kratos shifted direction, moving faster now. If the Night King was creating diversions, that meant he had a plan, and plans had weak points. The eastern wall broke first, not from force, from panic. A group of free folk, seeing the endless tide, tried to retreat through a service gate. They opened it to escape. Corpses poured through. Jon saw it happen from his position, saw the hole open, saw the flood. "Close that gate," he roared. But the free folk were already through it, running into the inner courtyard. And behind them came death. A Northern Lord Manderley's man grabbed John's arm. "We have to fall back, regroup at the Great Hall." We regroup, they regroup faster, we hold here. That gate is lost. John examined the breach. Undead flooding through, spreading like infection. He made the call. "Seal it." "My lord, our people are still." "Seal it." Tormund pulled the lever. The portcullis dropped, iron teeth slamming down, cutting off the gate. Trapping fighters on the wrong side. John heard them scream, heard them die. Didn't let himself look away. "East wall is lost," John said, voice flat. "Pull everyone to the center. Tighten the perimeter." The retreat began, organized, brutal. Anyone too slow got left. John counted the losses in his head. 50, 70, 100. Still better than total collapse, but barely. In the crypts, Sansa moved among the civilians. Children, elderly, wounded. Anyone who couldn't fight. "Stay quiet," she told them. "Stay together." A woman clutched her daughter. "How long?" "Until it's over." And if it's never over, Sansa had no answer for that. The walls were thick down here, stone and earth, safe from anything above ground. But as Sansa walked past the ancient tombs, she felt something wrong. The air was colder than it should be. Not from the season, from something else. She stopped at the tomb of Lyanna Stark. The statue serene, peaceful, dead. For a moment, Sansa thought she heard something. A tap. From inside the stone. She pressed her ear against the marble. Nothing. Must have imagined it. But as she walked away, the tapping started again. Quiet. Patient. Waiting. The inner courtyard became a killing floor. John positioned fighters in a half circle. Shields front, spears over shoulders, archers behind. The dead came in waves, mindless, tireless, testing every weakness. "Keep formation," John shouted. "Don't break ranks." A white lunged. A spear caught it. Another took its place. Then another. The line stayed firm for 5 minutes. Then a Northern Lord Glover's brother panicked and pulled his men back without orders. The gap opened. The tide flooded through. "Fill that hole!" Tormund bellowed, throwing himself into the breach with his axe. John ran to support. Longclaw sang through dead flesh. 1 white, 2, 5. Not enough. Never enough. "We can't maintain this." Davos appeared at John's side, face pale. "There's too many. We hold until Bran. Bran's in the Godswood. We're out here dying for bait that hasn't sprung." John wanted to argue, wanted to explain the plan. But the plan was drowning in corpses. "Fall back to the inner keep," John ordered. "Fighting retreat now." The line collapsed inward, controlled, barely. They lost another 30 fighters in the withdrawal. The courtyard filled with whites, a sea of blue eyes and grasping hands. John reached the keep's entrance. The last defenders poured through. He counted heads, 200 left, maybe less. "Bar the doors." Sansa's voice cut through the chaos. She was there, blade in hand, face hard as winter stone. The doors slammed shut. Iron bars dropped. Outside, the dead pounded against oak and iron. Patient, persistent, inevitable. Inside, exhausted fighters slumped against walls. Some bled, some wept. All knew this was temporary. How long will the doors last? John asked. Long enough, Sansa replied. Or not at all. In the Godswood, Bran sat beneath the heart tree, perfectly still, perfectly calm. Theon Greyjoy stood 10 paces ahead, bow drawn, ironborn warriors flanking him, 20 men total, all that remained between Bran and whatever was coming. Anything, Theon called back. Not yet, Bran replied. Theon's hands ached from gripping the bow. They'd been here for an hour. The battle raged beyond the walls, screaming, dying, the castle falling apart. But the Godswood remained empty. He's not coming, one of the Ironborn muttered. He'll come, Bran said with certainty. He always does. When he's ready. When the rest of you are broken. When there's no hope left. Bran's voice carried no fear. That's when he likes to arrive. Theon hated how right that sounded. The temperature dropped another degree. Frost spread across the ground like spilled milk. Something's coming, Theon breathed. The Ironborn tightened formation. Arrows knocked, swords drawn. The trees at the Godswood's edge rustled. A figure stepped through. White, tall, eyes like frozen stars. Not the Night King, a White Walker. Just one. Steady, Theon commanded. The walker advanced, slow, inevitable. Ice sword gleaming, Theon loosed. The arrow flew true, struck the walker's chest. It shattered against ice armor. Useless. Dragon glass, someone shouted. 2 Ironborn charged with obsidian blades. The walker moved faster than it should. One slash. Both men fell frozen before they hit the ground. Theon dropped the bow, drew his sword, stepped forward. Stand back, Bran said quietly. This one isn't for you. What? The White Walker stopped, tilted its head, as if listening. Then it turned and walked back into the trees. Not retreating, reporting. He knows we're here, Bran observed. Now he'll come. Theon's blood ran cold. Because if that was just reconnaissance, what came next would be overwhelming. Germ. Kratos broke through the tree line just as the White Walker turned away from the Godswood. He recognized the tactic immediately. Scout. Confirm. Withdraw. The Night King was verifying the bait, which meant he was close. Kratos moved through the dark with the certainty of something hunting. His senses filtered through cold, through magic, through the wrongness that saturated this place. There, a presence. Massive, patient, wrong. North of the Godswood. Maybe 200 meters. Surrounded by White Walkers and their army numbering in the hundreds. But not moving yet. Still waiting. Kratos understood immediately. The Night King wasn't delayed. Wasn't cautious. He was savoring. The victory wasn't in killing Bran. It was in making the Living watch everything they built crumble first. In letting hope drain before delivering the final stroke. Cruelty dressed as strategy. Kratos had seen it before. Gods who wanted worship and submission before death. Tyrants who needed the defeated to know they were defeated. It was always the same mistake. They waited too long. Kratos began moving toward the concentration of cold, silent, purposeful. The Night King wanted to make an entrance. Kratos would make sure it was his last. In the keep, Jon received 3 reports in 30 seconds. Eastern Crypt, something's wrong down there. We're hearing things. The doors won't hold much longer. They're stacking bodies against them for weight. We've lost contact with the Godswood. Jon felt the walls closing in. Every decision led to collapse. Every plan became disaster. Sansa gripped his arm. Jon, we need to evacuate the crypts, now. Evacuate them where the keep's surrounded. I don't know, but something's wrong down there. The dead... A scream cut through her words. From below, from the crypts, Jon and Sansa ran. Down stone steps, into cold that shouldn't exist underground. They burst into the crypt chamber and froze. The tombs were opening, not breaking, opening. From within, ancient Starks, dead for generations, rising with blue eyes and grasping hands. The crypts, the safest place in Winterfell, had become a slaughterhouse. Children screamed. Adults grabbed what they could to fight. Elderly who couldn't run simply gave up. Jon cut down a Stark ancestor. Felt sick doing it. Cut down another. Get everyone out. Sansa was already herding survivors toward the stairs. Move. They flooded upward, panic complete. Jon fought a rear guard. Every step backward bought time. Every second cost lives. They reached the main hall, slammed the crypt entrance shut, barred it. Pounding came from below, different from the pounding at the doors. Quieter, closer. The dead were inside the walls now, above and below. Winterfell was falling. We have one move left, Jon said. Sansa's eyes met his. She understood. The gods would, she confirmed. All of us. Last stand. Jon nodded. Get everyone who can fight. Leave the rest. It was the cruelest order yet, but it was the only one that mattered. Because if the Night King wanted Bran, Jon would make sure the bastard had to walk through a mountain of bodies to get him. And somewhere in that mountain, maybe just maybe Kratos would find his opening. The doors to the keep groaned. The crypts pounded. And in the godswood beneath the heart tree, Bran waited. Not afraid, not hoping, just waiting for winter to finally arrive. Winterfell wasn't a fortress anymore. It was a tomb that hadn't finished claiming its dead. The courtyard ran with blood and meltwater. Corpses both kinds littered every surface. The living stumbled between them, too exhausted to tell which was which until one moved. Jon dragged a wounded brother toward the great hall. The man's leg bent wrong, bone showing. He'd live or he wouldn't. Jon couldn't spare attention to care which. Lord Commander! A runner, breathless. The crypts, they're breaking through the barricades? Jon closed his eyes. 1 second. That's all he allowed himself. Seal the entrance. Anyone still down there? He couldn't finish. Didn't need to. The runner ran. Another decision, another group abandoned. Another weight Jon would carry until it crushed him. Sansa appeared dress-torn, face streaked with soot. We've lost the eastern quarter. The southern wall is failing. We need to consolidate. Where? The godswood. It's the only defensible position left. Jon understood what she wasn't saying. They weren't defending Winterfell anymore. They were defending one tree and the boy beneath it. Everything else was already lost. In the godswood, Theon Greyjoy counted arrows. 4 left. 4 chances to matter. Around him, the Ironborn were down to 8. They'd been 20 when the night started. The missing 12 weren't missing. They were scattered across frozen ground, blue eyes staring at nothing. How much longer? One of them asked. Theon didn't answer, because he didn't know, because it didn't matter. Bran sat in his chair perfectly still, watching something no one else could see. He's close now, Bran observed. Not afraid, not hopeful, just stating fact. How close? Close enough to taste it. The temperature dropped. Not gradually, like stepping through a door into winter's heart. Frost spread across the heart tree. The pool froze solid in heartbeats. Then the White Walkers came. Not one, 6. They flowed into the clearing like mist given form. Ice swords gleaming, eyes burning with cold fire. Behind them a figure, taller, crowned in frozen thorns, moving with the certainty of something that had never been denied. The Night King. Theon drew, loosed. The arrow flew true. It shattered against ice armor. Useless. For Winterfell, Theon roared, drawing his blade. The Ironborn charged with him. Brave, futile. The first 3 died before they reached the walkers. Frozen mid-stride, swords falling from dead hands. Theon made it farther, got within striking distance. The Night King moved. One gesture, almost lazy. The ice spear caught Theon through the chest, pinned him to frozen earth. He gasped, tried to speak. Nothing came. The Night King walked past him, didn't look back. Theon was already dead, just taking time to realize it. Bran waited beneath the tree, no fear in those distant eyes, just acceptance. The Night King reached for him. Mesne. Jon broke through this tree line with 50 fighters. All that remained. All that mattered. He saw Theon's body, saw the Ironborn scattered like broken toys, saw the Night King's hand inches from Bran's face. Now! Jon screamed, charging. The Night King didn't turn, didn't need to. White Walkers formed a wall between Jon and his target. Longclaw met Iceblade. The clash rang like broken bells. Jon pushed. The Walker didn't budge. Around him, the last defenders of Winterfell threw themselves against an enemy that couldn't be beaten. Jon knew it. They all knew it. But they fought anyway. Because that's what the living did. They fought and they died, and they bought seconds with blood. The Night King's fingers touched Bran's forehead. Then a voice cut through the chaos. Cold, flat, absolute. Move! Jon knew that voice, knew what came with it. He threw himself sideways. Kratos walked into the clearing like he'd been there all along. Ash-white skin, red mark stark against the frost, eyes dark as endings. The Night King paused, turned, faced this new variable. For the first time since the long night began, something in the Night King's posture changed. Not fear, recognition. This was different. Kratos didn't slow, didn't speak again, just moved. The blades of chaos came out in a blur, chained weapons singing through air. They wrapped around the Night King's arm's chest neck. Iron and fire binding ice and death. The Night King pulled back. Kratos yanked forward. The impossible happened. The Night King stumbled. Jon had never seen anything move the Night King. Not fire, not steel, not desperation. But Kratos dragged him across frozen ground like hauling rope. The chains sizzled where they touched ice. Steam rising. Magic fighting will. Will won. Kratos pulled the Night King away from Bran, away from the tree, toward nothing but open ground and judgment. The Night King raised one hand. Every wight in Winterfell turned toward the Godswood. 1,000 corpses receiving new orders. Kratos didn't let him finish the gesture. He closed the distance, grabbed the Night King by the throat with his free hand, slammed him down into the earth hard enough to crack stone beneath snow. The Night King's eyes blazed. Cold poured off him in waves. Frost spread across Kratos' arm, trying to freeze flesh, trying to stop movement. It didn't work. Kratos pressed his palm against the Night King's chest. where a heart would be if this thing had ever been human. "You don't own death," Kratos said quietly. Then he squeezed. Not physically, something else. Something John couldn't see but felt in his bones. Power meeting power, will crushing will. The Night King's eyes widened. For the first time in 8,000 years, the embodiment of winter felt something it didn't control. Fear wasn't the right word. Understanding was closer. It understood it was ending. The blue light in the Night King's eyes flickered. Once, twice, went out. The ice crown cracked, fell away, the armor fractured. And the Night King, the thing that had ended the world, shattered like glass dropped on stone. The silence was worse than the screaming. Every wight in Winterfell froze mid-step. Thousands of corpses locked in place like puppets with cut strings. Then they fell. All at once. No ceremony, no drama. Just gravity reclaiming what should never have stood. The White Walkers exploded into frozen fragments. Beautiful. Terrible. Gone. Jon stood in the aftermath, sword still raised, breath misting in air that suddenly felt less hostile. Around him, the living stared. At the fallen dead. At Kratos, at the empty space where the Night King had been. No one cheered. No one spoke. They'd won. But it felt like surviving, not victory. Kratos stood over the shattered remains, silent, already turning away. His part was done. Jon found his voice. How did you? He was never immortal. Kratos' voice carried across the clearing. Just old, and no one had bothered to kill him, right? And you knew how? I've killed everything else that thought it couldn't die. Kratos walked toward the tree line. This was just another one. Sansa emerged from the castle, surveying the field of fallen corpses. Her eyes found Jon's. "Count the living," she said. Not celebrating. Already calculating what came next. Because that's what rulers did. The battle ended. The politics began. Three days later, ravens flew south. The long night was over. The dead defeated. Winterfell saved. By the time the news reached King's Landing, it had been rewritten 6 different ways. Each version shaped to benefit whoever was telling it. Some said Jon Snow had struck the killing blow. Others claimed Bran's magic turned the tide. A few whispered about a monster from the north, one that couldn't be controlled or bought. That last version scared the Southern Lords more than the Night King ever had. A week after the battle, a delegation arrived from the capital. Well-dressed, well-fed, carrying offers that sounded like threats wrapped in silk. They wanted Kratos, to employ him, to study him, to ensure his considerable talents were properly directed toward the realm's interests. Sansa received them in the great hall, listened politely, then smiled the smile she'd learned from Cersei. "The warrior you seek has already left." Left where? North, south, somewhere else. He didn't ask permission. He doesn't answer to anyone. Her smile never wavered. "Including you." The delegates left frustrated, angry, empty-handed. That night, Jon found Sansa staring at the Godswood from her window. "Do you think he'll come back?" Jon asked. "No." Sansa's voice was certain. "Men like that don't stay. They break the things that need breaking and move on. And us, we rebuild. We argue about who gets what. We pretend we learned something." She turned to face him. "And in 10 years, we'll probably be right back where we started." John wanted to argue, wanted to believe the long night had changed people, made them better. But Sansa was right. She usually was. The dead were gone. The living remained. And the living were very good at finding new reasons to bleed each other. Far south in King's Landing, Cersei Lannister sat on the Iron Throne and listened to reports about the North. The dead defeated. Winterfell standing. The Starks stronger than before. She didn't care about the dead. She cared about power. And power, she understood, came from controlling narratives. So she smiled and sent congratulations north, promised aid, swore unity, and began planning how to use the North's exhaustion to her advantage. Because the Night King was gone. But ambition never died. It just waited for new opportunities. So, Kratos walked alone through snow that was just snow again. No magic. No malice. Just cold. He'd seen this story before. Different world. Different tyrants. Same ending. The monster dies. The people celebrate. Then they go back to fighting each other. He'd stopped expecting different. Somewhere behind him, Westeros would tear itself apart over the ashes of unity. Lords would scheme. Queens would plot. Good men would make bad choices and call them necessary. And in a generation, they'd probably summon something worse than the Night King, because that's what people did. They forgot. They repeated. They learned nothing. Kratos had broken the chain that held the dead. But he couldn't break the chains people built for themselves. That was their burden, their choice. His choice was simpler. Keep walking, find the next thing that needed killing. Hope the next world was different, knowing it wouldn't be. But walking anyway. Behind him, Winterfell stood, scarred, battered, alive. Ahead of him, the world stretched wide and indifferent. Kratos had faced gods, ended pantheons, broken fate itself. And still, he walked alone. Because some things couldn't be saved, only survived. The snow fell, the wind blew, the world kept turning, and a man with ash-white skin disappeared into the distance, carrying his wars with him, leaving the living to their own.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to turn on notification so you won't miss our future video. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.